Polar Code. The Polar Code is a regulatory framework established by the International Maritime Organization, IMO, to provide safety, environmental and operational standards for ships operating in polar waters. It is an international code for ships operating in polar waters and applies to all ships, regardless of their flag, size, or purpose, that operate in the Arctic and Antarctic regions. Arctic RE waters north of latitude 60 degrees north, with deviations to include waters around the 60 degrees north, southern exposure of Greenland, but excluding those around Iceland, the Norwegian mainland, Russia's Kola Peninsula, the White Sea, the Sea of Okhotsk and Alaska's Prince William Sound. Antarctic area, all waters south of latitude 60 degrees south. Every ship to which Polar Code applies shall have onboard Polar Ship Certificate. The Polar Code was adopted by the IMO in November 2014, and it entered into force on January 1, 2017. The Polar Code contains regulations for ships to operate safely in the harsh and remote polar regions as per SOLAS Chapter 14 Safety Measures for Ships Operating in Polar Waters. The Polar Code is divided into two parts, Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 contains mandatory requirements for ships operating in polar waters. It covers ship design, construction, equipment and operations. It includes regulations on structural strength, stability, propulsion, navigation and communication systems, as well as guidelines on emergency preparedness and response and SAR operations. Part 2, pollution prevention measures. It includes regulations on discharge of pollutants, the use of heavy fuel oil and management of sewage, garbage and other waste. It includes regulations on discharge of pollutants, the use of heavy fuel oil and management of sewage, garbage and other waste. Polar Water Operational Manual. The Polar Water Operational Manual, PWM, is a ship-specific reference document that is to be carried mandatorily and describes in detail how the ship shall be operated in polar waters. The requirements for the POM are found in Part 1A and 2 of the Polar Code. What shall be in the POM manual? It is the responsibility of the ship owner or operator to develop and implement a polar water operational manual that complies with the requirement of the Polar Code. The manual must address each hazard identified as relevant in the ship's Polar Code operational risk assessment. It is intended to help them take sound operational decisions and actions to protect the ship, its crew and passengers, and the polar environment. It is intended to help them take sound operational decisions and actions to protect the ship, its crew and passengers, and the polar environment. The manual must include or refer to specific procedures that the crew shall follow under the following conditions. The procedures address operations under both normal and emergency conditions. It provides guidance to the crew of a ship operating in the Arctic and Antarctic regions. This might include sea ice, cold temperatures, topside icing and high latitudes. In the event the ship encounters conditions that exceed its capabilities and limitations when operating in ice, either independently or with an icebreaker escort, if ice capable, in the event of an incident in polar waters.